Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Ryan Redding. He's actually a returning guest, and I'm so excited to have him on the podcast again. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's so cool to be back on the show because I loved it the first time. I had the great pleasure of having you on our show, on our podcast, a couple of times, I think.
That's right.
So it's so fun to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
You are so welcome. And Ryan, let me introduce you, and then we're going to start into this amazing conversation that we have planned. So you are a business consultant. You are a marketing strategist. You are the founder and the CEO of DP Marketing Services, which is basically a full agency that provides marketing services to tier 2 businesses. So not startups, but
right.
Businesses are going successful and they want to take it to the next level. And you mainly concentrate on the home improvement or home services arena, right? So like HVAC, plumbing, etc.
Yeah.
Just off the bat, people should go and see your website because it's amazing and really explains about your services. Yeah, for sure. And of course, we have to start the episode by giving a big shout out to Rise25, who actually produces both of our podcasts, and Jeremy and John that introduced us.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, and thank you, John. So Jeremy and John definitely introduced us. So that's Jeremy Wise and John Corcoran. And we just chatted before the podcast about how easy it is for us to create those podcasts because Rise25 takes care of all the rest. So there you go.
And they send you little goodies in the mail, like you get like the little jelly bean things like every couple months. Like, that's fun.
It is. I actually got mine yesterday. So that's true.
Shut up. That's cool. Yeah, the fact that it makes it easy to work with, fine. It's really about the free candy. Let's just call it what it is.
There are other benefits too. That's correct. And that's one thing about Ryan is he has an amazing sense of humor. So Ryan, let's jump into it. First of all, anything that you would like to add to your bio?
No, because that sounds way more amazing than I probably would say about myself. So no, that sounds flattering. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So today we were going to talk about a subject that I think is fascinating, which is basically myths and preconception or preconceived ideas that people have about marketing. Like, they believe that marketing, is completely automated and they can basically, it's like a complete dry process that it starts like it's a production line. It starts on one side of the production line, and then goes all the way, and at the end you get an exact result of everything that you wanted to do in the beginning, right? And then the other one is that it's so obscure and just basically it's like shooting darts in the dark, right? It's kind of like, okay, we do this, and maybe we get that result and maybe not, and it's really hard to understand. And some others. So let's start by basically debunking those myths, talking about it, and see what is the actual truth about marketing and about having effective marketing.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic and a great question. And so as I've been thinking, kind of reflecting on our conversation, I think I've kind of circled back to like 5 main myths that at least I run into often with men and women in the home services space. There might be more myths that like in other industries or in other verticals might be more prevalent, but these are the ones I think are really common for me. And yeah, I think one of them you referenced, and that's the idea that marketing is like this weird black voodoo magic that you don't know what it is. If you don't know if it's working, you just feel like you're being forced or told or sold to throw a crap ton of money at things without really having to understand the mechanics or the processes or the systems that are in place to know if that funding is effective. Is it achieving the outcome you want? Is it moving the needle that it's supposed to move? I feel like a lot of people struggle with that. And some of it, it's interesting because I think sometimes it's a dual edged sword. Because on one hand, sometimes there are how do I say this? There are low quality vendors. Like marketing gets a bad rap sometimes for really good reason. But there are some people who are very opaque about what they do with the company's investment. But other times, maybe worse, it's like where the business owner or the marketing manager, whoever's responsible for managing the marketing function of a business, where they don't want to learn the language, the terminology, the KPIs, the framework. Like they want to remove their brain from the process and kind of blame everyone else for things not working. I think both are equally bad, right? It's like if someone is doing marketing on behalf of a company, either as a third party agency or as an internal marketing company, or maybe it's an owner operator doing the marketing themselves, there should be an expectation of clarity on what's happening. How are you measuring those outcomes? Things like that. It should not feel mysterious. And at the same time, if somebody is an owner of a business, if they're responsible for managing the marketing of a business, it should be incumbent on them to put their brain into the process also, to not advocate their role where they don't have to learn. Because I feel like I hear people say things like, well, that's why I hired you, so I don't have to think about this.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, I get that, but you're setting yourself up to experience unnecessary struggle, right? Because nobody's going to understand your business better than you. Full stop. And that's true for an internal marketer who might be an employee or a third-party vendor that might be contracted by the company. It's really important that brain cycles are shared. So both of those result in the same outcome of the black voodoo magic, right? You just throw money at it. You don't know what's working, what's not. Sometimes by willful ignorance, and sometimes because maybe somebody lacks the competency or the clarity or the whatever those traits are that makes them want to be forthcoming with what's happening in place. I think that's a really common
solution for that is like what you just mentioned in terms of like, you know, how I always like to go into the processes and system of it. But the process is basically to have well-defined analytics, but it's also understanding what those analytics are actually measuring, because, you know, both you and I probably, I'm sure you have as well, you know, seen companies that just throw analytics after analytics after analytics, and it just becomes overwhelming. And that can be also like, then that's where the business owners also say, well, you know, I don't have time for it. I have to run a whole business. I'm not now going to understand the entire jargon of what Google Analytics are all about, right? So it's important to define outcome and show like transparency, a dashboard that is very transparent for both to understand. And I love what you said in terms of the combined power. So it's the collaboration of like what worked and what didn't work. It's not like just pointing fingers. Well, you know, Ryan, I hired you to handle the marketing in my company and you handle it. Well, you know, there is two sides to it, because as a business owner, you have to make sure that, you know, you can't like market a business that have 2-star reviews, right? Or that you are not,
gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
Or that you ask to, you know, get content and we're not getting the content. So definitely that collaboration is super important, and that transparency of the analytics and understanding it's super. So that's myth number one. Let's go to the second one.
Yeah, so I would say the second myth is probably the inverse of that, right? Which is if the first option is everything's a black hole and you don't understand anything and it's nebulous and there's zero clarity, the other is this expectation that marketing is like this mindless robot that you push button and you should expect the magic to happen. I think that's equally dangerous to set yourself up for. A lot of businesses, and sometimes for the exact same reasons that they think the black hole exists, right? They don't want to think, they don't want to engage their brain. There's a sense of comfort on going, oh, all I need is to hire this one person or this one company or this one tool. I can push that button and I don't have to understand. I don't have to think. It's just going to work. The problem is that rarely is the case. You don't ever get yourself in a position where you can understand what's happening, why it's happening, leverage it, and then the whole point at that point is then get more expected outcomes, because you're just kind of dependent on following the really predictive path. And so on one side, that's I don't want to blame processes, but that's like selling this idea of like, hey, all the thinking is done for you, all the work is done for you. It's in this cute little box, cute little software, whatever it is, and you don't have to worry about it. Just throw your credit card in and push the button, and voila. And I think that also starves efficiency from the marketing campaigns, without companies actually being able to recognize that. So I think that's like the other side of that same coin of the black voodoo magic.
Totally. It's kind of like, you can't have, it's like the pendulum cannot swing one side or on another. And it's not the process you're blaming. I mean, I think that is where people start blaming a process, because they go, well, I'm in marketing, I'm creative, there are no processes. So there are no processes for marketing, right? Because
Right.
there are processes, so you can actually also have room for the creative side, the human element, the creativity, the evaluation. A process is only as good as it actually gets you to the outcome that you want and allows the people to participate. There is nothing that we are doing that does not need us, right? I mean, except that, let's say, like, if we took all the elements that, like, let's say, you can run something like a report automatically, right? Or you can have like an automatic posting on social media because you're using a tool. So that basically doesn't need for you to, to click all, or you or one of your staff, right, to click all the buttons in order to actually get it posted. But the content, the writing, what it is all about, even if you're using artificial intelligence, you still, I mean, I just recently interviewed the founder and CEO of lately.ai, and she was very, I mean, her name is Kate, and she's wonderful. And, she was very specific to say that, they do run it through AI, but then there is the human element. The human has to look at it because the machine is not going to replace us. What it does, it allows us more time to invest more of our creativity into it.
Yeah, totally. It's the weird metaphor, and that's like the microwave sort of model, right? The microwave, when it was invented, was, this is not sexist, this is literally how it was positioned in the 50s, was, hey, women who are housewives, this is going to make you be able to save so much time making your turkey dinners. Throw your turkey in the microwave and voila, so easy. And we know, like, that time savings just got reallocated to something else. Like, they didn't get this. These same people didn't get to like sit back on the couch and sip a martini. But it's so interesting because I think the point you're making drives me to the third myth that I feel like so many people struggle with, and that is, I'm gonna have to say this a couple times, is that marketing drives ROI. I think a lot of people have the fallacy that marketing drives ROI. In reality, operations drives ROI, right? Which is 100% going to be something that you can optimize and refine processes for. But so, like, in our space, we work with a whole lot of plumbing, HVAC, electrical, home remodel, like companies like that. And these companies are primarily getting their customer leads and their inquiries from a phone call. Yes, there's web forms. Yes, there's chat. There's things like that. But the overwhelming majority of these leads come in as a live phone call. So from a marketer standpoint, our job is to get that phone to ring, right? Of all the options, when the customer's looking at making a decision, we're going to make that company stand out. We want to get that phone call. Fantastic. Once the person picks up the phone on the other end, now it's an operations game. And this is going to be true from the technology involved with handing off the phone call. Like, so for instance, if you're needing a plumber, chances are you're not sitting around on a Thursday afternoon just like randomly Googling who's a plumber around you just because you're curious. You likely have a problem. You likely have like cold water in your shower. You're standing in your basement. It's flooded. There's something that's like not a pleasant scenario. So there's a sense of urgency. If it takes your team 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes to pick up a stupid phone call, that customer is hanging up and going to someone else, right? If when your team picks up the phone, they act like they're bothered, they're annoyed, they're distracted. Your customer's hanging up, they're going to someone else. If they get picked up the phone, but they can't get booked out for like 3 weeks because you only have one person running the office and there's no way to do like, how are you doing dispatch and who's doing what? And you don't have enough parts in house to actually do the jobs quickly. So your time is poorly spent. You're going to lose that customer to someone else. If your pricing's wrong because you think you need to be the cheapest person in town, so you're just going to try to attract all the people with low dollar offers, and you start feeling like, I'm busy, but I'm not being profitable, your pricing is wrong, right? You're going to lose your business because you can't price yourself up to stay in business. All of these are fundamental operations problems of making sure you're priced correctly, knowing how to answer the phone dispatch, knowing how to make sure your technicians are efficient on every call they make, knowing that your average jobs are actually covering your overhead of actually running those jobs. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not getting my technicians as busy as I'm getting. I literally had a conversation the other day with someone. They had in 1 month, it was like 600 some odd phone calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
They answered 20% of the phone calls.
Oh, no.
And they were like, they're frustrated because they're like, but marketing is supposed to keep us busy. Like, oh, okay, look, we got you 600 phone calls. You answered 20% of those. At some point,
it's really like, what you're talking about is so correct in terms of operations have to be there. Marketing is there to really create the demand and drive the phone calls in, right? To drive the people to the front door, phone is ringing, or basically to the phone to ring. Then the picking up the phone and knowing how to do it in the internal procedures. And not only, let's say, even if they answered 80% of it, but then there is the conversion. They need to know how to sell, right? But then they also need to know how to deliver. I mean, if your technicians are not doing a good job, then people are just going to run away, not pay you, whatever. And that also will affect the ROI. So it's a combination, right? Because you can have the best processes and the best operations, but if the phone is not ringing, there is nobody to go through the line.
100%.
So marketing is the start of the line in order to create the ROI, which is the actual, in order for you to be profitable, it has to go through the entire production cycle.
Yep.
And what you said is so, so true. That's why we work so well together. The marketing has to be there first. You have to have enough volume of people calling or coming in, and then, or reaching out somehow, right?
Sure.
Then you have to have the operation, but then it goes back into a circle into marketing, because you can, if you're super efficient and you have if you're continuously improving your operations, then you will have more capacity. So then we need marketing to get in more leads, but it's only if there is this harmonious circle that goes back and forth, right? Or basically goes into in a circle, not even back and forth.
Yeah, it totally is one of those where it takes, I always use the metaphor of like a wheel, of every business has all these needs, and all these needs have to fit and function well together in order for the business to thrive. Right. And so marketing is like one of those little spokes, but it's just one of those spokes. Operations is going to be one, CSR, your team culture, your legal structure, your financial structure. All those things also have to be in line and stable and strong in order for the business to like be profitable and to last more than just a few years. So yeah, I think that's a real big myth, is that people tend to think that marketing is the primary driver for ROI. And to your point, it does play a role. Cost of acquisition does go into the math of ROI. However, the business is going to have more levers that they can pull from an internal efficiency standpoint than a marketer would on getting that lead in the door to begin with. So yeah,
it's like, it's like a body, it's like a full organism, right? I mean, it's kind of like, if you think that you're just going to go to the gym and work on your arms and you're going to be in good shape, you're not. You have to do everything, that's what it is.
Yeah. It's a big one. And I think, so
we're myth number 4 now.
Myth number 4. Myth number 4 is interesting because I think some people get it, but I'd say 95% of people don't. And the myth is that all marketing is equally efficient. So a classic example, let's say a company has $100 to spend on marketing, $100. Now they have to choose what's the best way to do this $100. They might want to say, hey, they want to go buy a billboard or time on a radio or like one of those tabletop advertisements at their local Mexican or Asian restaurant. They might want to do like something like AdWords, but there's this expectation of wherever they throw that $100, they're going to get the same outcome, right? And the trick is that's 100% not at all how marketing it is. I don't know a single person in my life who's ever driven by a billboard and then saw an ad for whatever company or product or service, and then pulled out their phone to call said company for product or service in transit. Right? They just don't.
The QR code.
Yeah, they just don't. There are totally examples where they do work, right? So, I think it's a common myth that all marketing is created equal, that they all have the same efficiency. Because if you look at a metric like a billboard, if you're trying to count leads, if like how many phone calls, chances are your billboards are going to rank really low, right? They're going to rank really low on like your call source, but that doesn't mean that they don't work. That's just not the job that they're playing. And so it's really important for business owners to know every channel in marketing, from billboard to TV to radio to those tabletop advertisements at restaurants, all the way down to website, SEO, and social media. They're all going to have a different role in the customer journey to play. And so you should judge them only by that role that it's supposed to fill. Right?
I love it. So true. So true. Good. That's a great one. So what is myth number 5?
Myth number 5 is that marketing is the magic bullet that can solve all the problems. And this kind of circles back to the crux of the problem was number 3. Yeah. Because I feel like so many businesses, and this is true for any business owner that I've ever spoken with, if their business is struggling, if times are hard, and everyone who's been in business for any period of time has felt that strain. But when they're struggling, the first instinct so many people wrestle with is, I just need more customers.
It's so true.
More, right? If I just had more customers, I would be able to do X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times, if they had more customers, all that would do is create more pain.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so true, Ryan. I mean, I can tell you, it's like, when it's the easiest one to look at, right? Because, even when I, let's say, talk to a prospective new client or I interview somebody, so they're like, okay, so if they're struggling, I love to work, our clients are like successful entrepreneurs, basically, that are the fast growing companies that are lacking consistency. Really, that's who we like to work with. But sometimes I talk to business owners that are struggling, because you're right. I mean, everybody struggles at some point, right?
Right.
But what's happening? Well, we don't have enough new clients. We don't have new patients. We don't have new customers. We need more of that. That will solve our problems. But it's not. It's kind of like you have a messy house, but you're bringing more guests in. It's just going to create more of you can present your house. You have to clean your house and put it in order. But it goes back to that circle we talked about, like the wheel that everything has to work together.
Yeah, it's really important. And I remember working with someone. It was in a consultancy sort of function where they were complaining about the number of customers, just like this, right? If things would be so much better, so much easier if I just had more customers coming in the door. And we walked through the math of the cost of them to acquire customers, and then their operational efficiency, like what's the cost of them fulfilling the service? What's the overhead for them to actually exist during that process? And the way that the business ops was structured, what set up their financials, where the busier they got, the faster they would go out of business. Right? And it took literally putting this on a giant spreadsheet and drawing it out. I think it was like a 14-month event horizon, where from that point in time to 14 months in the future, the more leads that came in, the faster they would die. In month 14, like there would be no more business, right? It is shocking to people when they realize how sometimes that math can work against them if they don't have the internal operations correct, if they keep having employee turnover. So now they're always having to hire, they're always having to train, they can't keep people long enough. So morale's low. So no one actually does the job right the first time anyways, because they don't want to even be there. Like all these things have to fit together. Very rarely, very, very rarely is marketing this magic savior to your business that will make or break. most of the time it's all these other factors working together. But yeah, it's an easy myth for people to fall into of thinking if only they had more customers, everything would be easier. Most of the time, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. I know. So the difference between 3.3 and 0.3 and 5 are pretty similar, but 3 is basically like the belief that marketing is the driving the ROI, which is basically the other things there that has to drive it because you get it to a certain point, but then it has to continue. Like all aspects of the business have to work. Marketing, operations, but then everything else in order to be able to realize the ROI for marketing. And then point number 5 is that marketing is not necessarily the panacea or the reason why the business is not being successful. You really have to dig in and find out the correct situation and look at the business as a whole to actually fix that problem and then utilize marketing at the right time. So those are the differentiators between those two.
Yeah, right? It's a really, those are primary. Yeah, I would lump that into there. One is more financial and one is more like
management, leadership, and finding the right why. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And maybe one is more oriented on blame too, right? Because people are like, well, this marketing doesn't have ROI, right? Like there's something wrong with the marketing, and maybe chances are it's not. But also the other has to do with hope of like, oh, if only we could do this. If only we got more leads, we'd be able to get it. And maybe, but probably not. So yeah, they're very similar.
But there are differences, and we have to look at them because people look at it from different viewpoints. I agree.
100%.
Wow, this is like has been like, it's great because now we know the 5 myths about marketing, and I think it will help business owners to really look at it if they actually are falling for one of those myths. And we gave very good solutions in terms of what to do in order for marketing to work and the entire business to work.
Yeah, it is a holistic problem. Marketing is important. Like I'm not saying it's not a factor. It's just not the most important factor. It's just as important as legal structure and finance. But yeah, all of them have to work together. And hopefully if people realize that some of these things that they maybe are thinking about marketing are actually myths, they're not true, it might help them like step back, take a look at the whole machine, the whole organization as a systematized project and how those things work together that they can make better decisions through it.
Great. Ryan, it's always great to have you as a guest on this podcast and our conversations. I mean, I always learn something new, and I think our listeners are really going to benefit from the content we have here. So before we go, tell our listeners, I know I told them at the beginning they should look at your website, but let's tell them what the website is and how to get a hold of you.
Oh, sure. So probably the easiest way is you can just go to our website. That's dpmarketing.services, DP as in David, Paul, marketing.services. And there's a giant green button that says schedule a call. So just click the green button. And that will get you on our calendar. But yeah, we're also everywhere on YouTube. We have our own podcast called Blue Collar CEO, which you can find wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. But yeah, we're everywhere. So this is so much fun. It's, as I said earlier, it's an honor to be back. I always love talking with you because you are a breath of fresh air. And I just love how your mind works. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.